Welcome back to Beyond the Wrench. My name is Jay Goninen, and I am your host. Today's guest is someone who's lived the technician life and is now telling that story from a whole new perspective. Keith Smith grew up in the trade. His dad spent 28 years as a Ford technician, and Keith followed in his footsteps with nearly 20 years in the bays himself. After a major life transition, he stepped into storytelling and filmmaking, returning to his roots with his first documentary short, From Bay Floors to Backroads. Shot in his old Kentucky dealership and at a local tech college, the film highlights the human side of the trade through the voices of technicians, educators, and industry leaders. Keith, welcome to the Beyond the Wrench podcast. How are you?
I'm very well, Jay. Thank you. I'm honored and happy to be here.
So I just met you. It's an interesting story. You had shot this video that we'll talk about because it's a phenomenal video, and I hope that anybody listening will watch this video because I think it's really a nice reflection of our industry. But you had sent it to our team, and a lot of times we'll get a lot of different types of emails that come into us. And for whatever reason, yours really piqued my interest. And as I opened it and started to watch the video, it wasn't just the content itself, but the way that you did it. It was unique in kind of that short film type of realm. I just wanted to start off by giving you the highest praise for that video, because I think it's something that our industry needs more of, and just your ability to do some storytelling, pretty cool.
Well, I appreciate that very much. And that means a lot coming from you. I mean, you're a force in the industry, so I don't take your praise lightly. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think as you and I started talking, I could tell there's a lot of similarities between us. And I feel like a genuine love of the industry, a genuine want to see the industry move in better directions in some ways. And that came from your time in a shop. So let's talk about that. You grew up with your father as a technician. Was it something that you kind of just figured you were going to do all along?
Yeah, I don't think I really even thought much about it. I was one of those people, like many of us, who end up being technicians or people who work with their hands. School was just not my favorite thing. Just the learning style and the things that they were teaching just didn't pique my interest. So I didn't necessarily excel there, but I had areas that did interest me. And like you said, my father was a technician. So I grew up, I was sweeping a shop floor and I'm like 10 years old going to work with my dad. And he wasn't the kind of person who would just let the kids sit there and watch him work all day. He put me to work. So I had my first experience in the shop as a very young person. So I just it almost was just like automatic. I didn't even think about it. Next thing you know, I'm a senior in high school. I'm in the auto mechanics program there, and I was already co-oping at the dealership at 17 years of age and spent more than 20 years doing it.
What year did you graduate high school?
1984.
1984. Okay.
Yes.
So you get in, and over that time, you saw some pretty drastic swings in technology and really the evolution of a service department as a whole. You were able to kind of see our industry grow up a little bit.
Exactly. And was forced to grow along with it. And that's one of the benefits I credit to the trade because when I got into the industry, I mean, the industry, anyone who's been in it, and you are a shop owner yourself and spent time there as well, so it's a never ending state of evolution. It never stops. And when I got into the industry, carburetors were already on their way out. So I had my hands on a few carburetors, and I never got good at rebuilding them because I didn't have to. By that time, we were just replacing them as reman units. Fuel injection was coming out, the birth of electronic engine control. It was in its infancy when I first got in to the bays. And of course, you see where it's at now. The internal combustion engine is almost a side note now because the rest of the car is just one big computer.
It really is. And I think it's so much of an evolution since the start of your career. And I'm curious, when you first got into a shop, and this, I'll go back to my experience a little bit here. I really struggled early on in my career as a technician because I had watched a lot of these folks work, like your dad, right? And I just assumed that it was going to be easier than it was. How was your experience coming into working as a full-time technician?
Well, I don't think I necessarily thought it would be easy because I was already having to turn wrenches with my dad in our basement whenever one of our vehicles messed up, or sometimes he would do his own little side hustle jobs at home, like every mechanic does. But it was still an eye-opening experience because as tough as I thought it was going to be, it was even tougher. And that's not a negative statement. It's just that it's much more challenging than I realized because it isn't just about learning the basics of the way mechanical things work. And it is that you need that as a foundation. But man, it just really opened my eyes in the technology side of it. The way the engines were being the changed and controlled was just mind blowing to me. And it just seemed like it once it started, it's just been like on rocket fuel ever since.
When we're talking about the advancements in technology, was this something that you embraced, would you say, or was this something you were scared of? Walk me through the technology and the advancements behind it. How did you look at that?
Well, fortunately, I had my father as a role model, and he actually was still working in the shop when I first started in the shop. And he came from the old school from back in 1969 when he first started. And he was one of the first people in our shop to be certified in electronic engine control through Ford Motor Company. So I wasn't intimidated by it because I kind of had someone there to mentor me through the process. So it was just like a matter of fact type situation. Ford had these little thing called Stars 2 testers that just beeped at you and put out numbers. I'm sure you know what I'm talking
I do.
about.
Yeah, I remember. Yep.
Very archaic compared to nowadays, but it was just a matter of fact to me. I didn't even question it. I just rolled right into it because he'd already told me, goes, look, underneath all this electronics is still the same old dirty, greasy engine. Don't let it scare you. Just do it. And that's what I did.
And that's good advice. I think a lot of our educators could learn something from that too. And I think a lot of them are really good at this, but
Mhm.
we've got to keep in mind when we're training young people that there is that level of intimidation, and it's this weird line that you have to walk, because I think you don't want to intimidate them to the point to where they become paralyzed, that they can't learn anything, or they're so afraid of touching anything that they're not actually going to do anything. But then you also can't just make it seem so easy that anybody can do it, because not everybody can do it. Oftentimes in
Exactly.
our industry, the electrical piece is what gets people.
Mhm.
And it's one of those things where, as an educator, I almost empathize with them or sympathize for them a little bit, because it can be challenging to get people to grasp electricity.
Absolutely. And it's no mystery why I think all manufacturers' training path and even independent world starts with putting people through electronic courses first. In fact, with my training path with Ford Motor Company, you couldn't even get certified in anything else until you got certified in electronics because you can teach people the mechanical stuff mostly, but the electronic stuff, you have to have a want to do it. And I mean, it's logical that that's where you need to start.
Yeah, it really is. And I like the way that your dad explained that, right? Where it
Mm,
is underneath all of this still the same engine, and
exactly.
it helps you maybe kind of wrap your hands around that. So walk me through your technician career. You start off in your dad's dealership, it sounds like.
Yes, I started out on the co-op program, 17 years old. I was already working in a shop and I was hourly at first and I was just, the gopher guy, changing oil with a floor jack and jack stand. So all you guys starting out with racks, you've got it made. And so I was just that guy and I just slowly worked my way up. Dad didn't give me any special favors because he knew I had to learn the trade if I was going to do it. But he was also there to support me. So I just spent years doing that. There were a few times later in life where I left the trade a couple of times to try other things. I had gotten married. I was trying different things, went into construction for a while, but I always came back to the trade. It was always there. I knew that if everything else fell apart. Even today, I would have a little bit of a learning curve because I've been out for a little bit. I could still go back and do something on cars, and that never leaves you. So I spent years just, like I said, growing up in it, seeing all the changes. um, I eventually, at one point, got into the management side for a while, and Actually did like a tour of the dealership, you might say, because I was a service advisor, assistant service manager. I even sold cars for a while, if you can believe that. So it's like the full experience.
I think you would have been a good car salesman as well. Just being able to uh, adequately and properly talk about a vehicle, and I think that helps build some customer trust. I've seen some former technicians turn into great salespeople because
Yeah,
they're able to talk about some of the stuff that maybe a normal salesperson wouldn't.
exactly, exactly. It serves you well in almost all areas of life.
Did you learn anything when you went into the advisor role or into the assistant service manager role that
Yeah,
maybe you I always think it's fun to have technicians come in and shadow like a service manager, for example, because I think
yes,
when you're on the other side of the shop, right, you're in the back, a lot of times you'll look up front and say, "Ugh, that service manager just sits on his butt all the time," or that, that advisor doesn't know what it's like out here. But when you go and experience the other end of it, you start to see that, hey, this job isn't as easy as it looks.
I could not agree more. And I applaud you for having people do that to shadow the manager because it isn't, I think everyone in every position should shadow everyone else's position at some point because it's very easy as a technician. And I did it, I'm guilty in my early years. Like, the service advisor man, they're driving me nuts. They can't get approval on this, they can't get approval on that. And you just don't know what they're doing up there. You just assume that you're doing all the hard work and they've got the easy job. And in reality, that's not true at all. They just have a different challenging job than you've got. And so it was an eye opener for me to see the other side of the fence, the other side of the coin, because that's why I noticed you noticed in my film I included a service advisor because a service
Mhm.
advisor, independent shop, dealership, it doesn't matter. Whoever is in that role, that relationship between them and the technician is absolutely crucial. Because let's face it, most technicians probably don't need to be customer facing individuals. They need to be doing what they're doing and have someone who's good at maybe more about more what we call soft skills, people skills in that role. So doing that was a huge eye opener for me. It made me a better technician eventually, quite honestly.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I've heard that from others as well that kind of make the shift and then bounce back, and that it gave them a different appreciation for the folks in the front. And I think personally that helps with some communication, right? Because maybe in the past, if you're a technician without having that experience in the front, you might not want to divulge information that you're supposed to be, or you might hold stuff back. And when you see that other side, you're like, okay, yeah, now I get why maybe they're walking the shop and asking for an update on where you're at with the car, because they're going to get called in 20 minutes by the customer asking about an update on their vehicle.
Exactly.
And if you can't supply that, you don't look the best, right? So being able to kind of have your finger on the pulse of the shop is important. And it's not like a manager is just trying to babysit everybody. They're just trying to figure out where everybody's at so that when they get that call, they have a good response. Like they look smart. The shop looks smart. The dealership looks smart. Everybody looks smart when you have an adequate response. And I think when you're just in that technician shoes, oftentimes you just think about, okay, why is this person over my shoulder all the time? Are they micromanaging me? And you're like, no, it's not micromanaging. They're just trying to communicate.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And that's a huge part of what builds trust in a shop. The technician doing good quality work is certainly a big part of the equation and the part that technicians you typically focus on. But that advisor who has the answers or who is transparent enough to say, I don't have the answer yet, Mr. Customer, but I'm going to go get the answer for you and I will return that call. Then they're coming back and into your bay, they're talking to you. So that, and same goes for the manager. Those are crucial trust building roles that it takes a team. It really does take the whole team working together to make this stuff happen. No one role is more important than another. They all have their different importance, if that makes sense.
It does. It makes total sense. And I think all of your experience in a shop is what led you to eventually make this video. That was the reason we had the first conversation, right?
Uh,
And for those of you, and again, I would encourage you to watch it if you haven't, kind of that documentary type feel. And I did like the music in the background, by the way. That was really, really nice. But it's a kind of a feel good video that kind of in the face of a lot of negativity that we have in this industry was just a good down to earth documentary type of video that when I watched it just felt better after watching it.
Yeah.
I give you that as a compliment because it was
Thank you.
so fun for me to watch.
Well, that means a lot, and that was very intentional to take that approach. As you and I discussed a couple of days ago when we first made our introductions to one another on the phone, I took that approach very intentionally because every industry, it doesn't matter what industry you pick, has its issues and challenges that need to overcome. And it happens to be in our time in history, we have a skilled trades issue across all skilled trade industries. So we're focusing on our industry, which is automotive technician. And you hear the negative side all the time. Oftentimes, it's human nature to want to magnify the negative, magnify the negative. But that's only one piece of the story. There are some negative things going on that has got us to where we are now, but it's not all negative. So I took that positive approach, that documentary type approach, but I wanted to tell this is a real human story. There are real humans involved. There are good people. Are there bad people in the industry? Absolutely. Just like there's bad people in the medical industry and pharmaceutical industry, manufacturing, it don't matter. Uh, but those are always, in my opinion, the exceptions. Most often, industries are filled with good people, and automotive is filled with a lot of good people. And I tell people oftentimes, like you, who have spent time in those bays, who like my film, I say that's because I speak technician, because I'm not coming at it from the outside trying to shine a light into a space I don't know much about. I came out of that space. So it was important to me to show that people this kind of messaging. I mean, I didn't have this kind of messaging growing up. I went through a period as a young teenager. I was sometimes slightly embarrassed about my grease stained hands that I couldn't get all the dirt off of because this is before the days of nitrile gloves. We just absorbed the chemicals back in the day. But um, but obviously I'm way beyond that now. But so that approach was very intentional because this is a positive story. And I just really want to counteract that negative spin that has been characterizing this industry, and especially this part of the industry for so long.
Yeah, and you hit on something there that I think is important to recognize, which is not just our industry has bad days, and I think there's so many people that make people in our industry that make wholesale assumptions, or they really base their level of satisfaction in their shop on the bad days, and at some level feel like thrive on the
Yeah.
negativity. And you look at that and you're like, okay, so if this person is this negative on social media, how do you think they are in their bay, right? Like they're going out of their way to talk poorly about these folks. And we talk a lot about culture in shops and the importance of a
Yes.
good culture, and that's one of those things where if you've got one or two of those people in your shop that is just driving that negative narrative over and over and over again, I don't care how good of a tech they are costing you happiness, right? They're costing you so much that might not show up in a P&L. I'd argue that it ultimately does.
Yes.
But when you look at those kind of I've got a book behind me called The Energy Bus, and they talk about energy vampires. And
Hmm.
if you're working next to those energy vampires that just suck the fun out of the job or suck
Yes.
just the enjoyment out, it's not fun to be around those people. And for those that are out there, and I think we all go through stages where maybe we're a little negative or maybe we're in a rut, and that's okay. It's more of being able to look at yourself in the mirror and recognize when something like that's happening to you and figure out how you pull yourself out of that. Because if you just go down that path and you're just always miserable, it doesn't matter if you're a technician. Like if you were to go out and say, "Oh, this profession stinks. I'm going to go be a carpenter." I can guarantee you're going to have bad days as a carpenter. I can guarantee you're going to have bad days as a plumber or whatever other trade you feel like treats their people so good. But if you look at some of the cool stuff we have, and that's what I thought your video did such a nice job at, was you talked about the nice people in the industry. We have a load of great people in this industry, a load
Yes.
of great technicians that are taking young techs under their wing, or they're
Mhm.
really kind of helping out with just wanting to pass it along to the next generation. And even I was just talking to a young technician friend of mine the other day, and when I say young, he's probably mid 30s, and he he just really had a really positive viewpoint or stance on the industry, but he's also not the one that's going to go out to social media and talk about it, right? Like he's not going to go
Yes.
blast how happy he is all the time. And so that's why I feel like that negative narrative carries over. But all of that just to say, if you find yourself as a technician in that negative zone, figure out a way to get yourself out of that. And if it's because you're working next to somebody that's super negative, have a conversation with your supervisor, have a
Mhm.
conversation with your service manager or shop foreman about, hey, maybe I need to move to a different bay, or I need to separate myself a little bit. But I think, and I'm no different than anybody else, behind a microphone right now, where I'll have bad days, but I
Sure.
try to find something to read or a good podcast to listen to or something to get my brain to snap out of that negative pattern. And I think that's so essential to being happy, not only as a technician, but in life. And just knowing for our industry, bad days don't just happen to us. They happen to everybody. It's just you don't want that bad day to turn into a bad week and then a bad month and a bad year and a bad decade and a bad life, right? Like you don't do
Exactly.
that, because that really is not the path you want to go down.
Oh, I mean, you're singing the song, my song right now, because this really smacks of self-development and personal accountability, and I love this stuff. And it put me in mind of two things. One is you've had Ed Roberts on your podcast a couple of times. I know,
Yeah.
which Bozard Ford is a shining example of doing some things right, to say the very least. And he said something. I've rewatched this recently. It's from a couple of years ago, but he talked about how important culture is in a shop. And you can amplify this, use this exact same example as for the industry as a whole. But he talked about how the culture in the shop is so important because if you want happy customers, you have to start with having happy employees. And like you were saying, if you have somebody who's in the bay next to you and they've made a lifestyle, like you said, anybody can have a bad day sometimes. We all do. That's just a human experience. But it's up to us whether we make that a lifestyle or not. And if we make it a lifestyle, well, well, then you've probably become a cancer to the whatever business you're working in, and you're poisoning everyone around you. And you don't have to stay that way, but, many people do. So I just want to re-emphasize what you just said, that oftentimes people get that backwards. We need a happy CSI. What was the word that Ed used? A happy CSI, but we need to have a happy ESI first.
Employee
Employee,
satisfaction.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, have employee satisfaction first because that's going to make you your happy customers. And and like you said, but people want to gravitate towards negativity. And in our industry, you hear that a lot. And I see all kinds of social media accounts out there. People who are miserable and upset they want to be seen and heard. So they usually do that through negative venting. What I wanted to do with my film was offer an alternative, like, look, you can still be seen and heard without being negative. There are real challenges and frustrations to the automotive trade, like you said, like there is every other industry. But that's the reason why I wanted to do it in a visual manner so people could see with their own eyes that there's good things going on. There's good people in the industry. And I came upon this idea from a woman named Sarah Yergrau. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's a producer, a two-time Emmy winner, founder
Wow.
of Common Ground Studios. She has collaborated with Mike Rowe on a couple of his projects. In fact, the last two projects you've seen, if you see a woman like People You Should Know and Return the Favor, there's a woman on screen with him who has co-host. That's Sarah Yergrau.
Wow.
And this stuff that we're talking about, this type of storytelling is her jam. So it inspired me thinking, okay, I saw a podcast interview of her and she said a phrase that stuck with me. She said, we can't be what we don't see. And what she meant by that is we need that example. We need to see the example out there. Because if all we see is the negative, it's easy to believe that that's all that's available. So that stuck with me. And that's when I realized, hey, there's nothing, no amount of books or articles that I can write, and Lord knows I can write them, and I've written bunches, but none of that's going to be as effective as taking this to the visual medium. People need to see with their own eyes. It's easier for anybody to write about it. And you read a book, you say, well, yeah. But when you're seeing the shop foreman on the screen that you saw, like in my video, who's my age, mentoring the 19-year-old kid who's got an engine tore down, and they're talking positively about the trade, it's a different narrative. And I think that's the kind of messaging that we need more of.
Oh, I could not agree more. And I wrote down that quote, "We can't be what we don't see." Was that the
Yes.
correct? uh,
Yes.
that is powerful, and we've talked a lot about this as it relates to getting more female technicians in the industry, right? Because a lot
Hmm.
of times there isn't that visibility to a good
Yes.
female technician, but when you do see one and a good female technician, there are a lot of them out there, believe it or
Hmm.
not.
Yes.
It's a thing. It is just awesome. And so I've told a lot of people we need to share that story more. We need to share the story of that young true apprentice tech that is doing some great things and learning,
Yes.
and just even chronicling through things as they are working on them in the shop. If you can talk to a technician that, what, I'm struggling with electrical diagnostics, and I'm struggling specifically with, maybe I'm new to using a scope. Like I just
Hmm.
like just walking through maybe some of that mindset as well. But what you did with your video, and I said this in our first conversation as well, was I thought it was really important you used real people, like not
Hmm.
actors, not somebody that, as a technician, if I were watching it saying that, "Well, that's not a real technician. I can tell that's not a real
Exactly.
technician." Like these are real people, and they were well spoken. They represented themselves in a very professional manner, and I guess the best way to put it is polished. The whole thing was
Yeah.
polished, and it to
Mm.
me, when we're looking for the respect that we're looking for as technicians, when we're looking to get paid more as technicians, when we're looking for all of this stuff that we're looking for, we hear in our Voice of Technician report that you're looking for. This video kind of represented a lot of that. You're showing this
Mm.
off in a way that if the general public were to watch this, would be intrigued and kind of see behind the scenes in terms of technology and the advancements and how hard it is, but also like how skilled these people are that are working on your car when you take it to the dealership. It kind of encompassed all of that.
Well, that means a lot. And it sounds self serving, but I agree insofar as the truth of showing the real people, because some of the most intelligent people I know work in the automotive trade. I mean, you can't be, I mean, for lack of a better word, it's kind of humorous. You can't be an idiot and be a successful automotive technician. You just can't.
You can't.
Or a service advisor either, for that matter, manager or so forth. But again, and I don't believe anyone set out with bad intentions to create like the technician shortage that we have. And it didn't happen because of one person, one policy, or one organization. This is a culture thing we're talking about, and that includes the industry, but also outside of the industry. So it's important for people to know that all that bad stuff you're hearing, yeah, some of it, not all of it,
I'm true. Right.
yeah, some of it exists, but so much more good exists. And we, like you said, about women in the trade, and I was very happy to be able to have a female technician in my video
That was cool.
because we need sharp minds. I told people all the time, so we don't need specific genders. We need sharp minds and people who are willing to learn, people who will step up and embrace the challenge. And let's not forget, make some pretty good money at the same time. And while not going into debt for your training. You actually can get paid to train, and but to show this side of things to me was just a no brainer. It's like this has to be done. I didn't really see anybody doing it, at least not from the perspective of having lived the life. And I went all in. Like I said, I
Yeah, you
bought the
did.
gear. I learned some fundamentals, took my technician mindset. I wasn't scared of technology. Like, well, I don't know how to use this camera that's worth more than my car, but I'm going to figure it out enough to make this video. And that's what I did.
What did you learn about there? Because as somebody that really stinks with especially audio and video equipment like myself, what did you learn about filmography and just like in general how you do something like that? Because it was again very well done, very professional, and for somebody to kind of you taught yourself, pretty cool.
Well, I appreciate it. I just went into it thinking, okay, I want to make this documentary style. I want music. I want this to be like entertaining, educational. And real quickly, before I forget this, you was talking about people responding to this video. You'd be surprised how many people watch this video, and some of them even commented on YouTube. You can go look at the comments, who were completely unaware that there's a technician shortage. Now, it's mind-boggling to us, but we're coming from the inside of the
We're
industry.
in it. Yeah,
So
we're
people
in
don't
it.
even realize the storm that's coming, the storm that's actually already here. But again, it emphasizes the importance of doing work like this. But I just went at it thinking, okay, I want to make a really cool looking documentary type thing. And I'm already into this sort of thing anyway. I'm very creative. I like to explore new ways of expression and telling stories. And storytelling is the core. So you have to remember, start with a good story. And this is a good story that needs to be told, and people want to hear it. After that, it's like, how do you learn what a good documentary is? Well, watch a lot of documentaries. Uh, you know what I mean? What do you like about it? Look how they set up the interview. You notice all my people are off to one side of the screen. That's called the rule of thirds. You don't usually put someone right dead center of the screen. You always have them off to one side, talking towards the space. It's just things you learn just by studying. I intentionally researched. Once again, I say kids nowadays are spoiled because I watch a lot of YouTube videos to educate myself. Then I would just get my camera out and start practicing and learning where all the settings were. And it's just like being a technician that first in our shop, when modular style engines first started coming out, like Ford's 4.6 liter and 5.4 liter. I rebuilt the first one in the shop from the block up because there was an oil consumption issue, and I got sent a bare block, and I had to build it, and no one had done it. There was not even anybody to ask, and there wasn't YouTube.
There wasn't YouTube back then, no.
Yeah. So you just do it one step at a time. Don't let it overwhelm you. Just, what's the old saying? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a
One bite at a
time.
time.
Yeah. And that's just really how you could learn this, just like I did. It's just if it interests you and you want to do it, and if not, you find someone else to do it. But it's just what makes a good technician is what makes anybody good at anything: a willingness to learn, not be intimidated by what you have to learn, and then just taking the leap.
Mm, that's good advice as a
Mhm.
whole, right there. And as you look to this, what was fascinating to me was that it wasn't like this was commissioned or like you had
Mm-mm.
a company that you were filming this for. And what I like about that is that there wasn't like the undertone of some marketing behind it,
Yeah.
right? This
Mhm.
was true raw video, and for nothing other than to help promote the trade and
Mhm.
to help make it better. And in a lot of times when you see a video like that, there's going to be some undertone to some other
Sure.
marketing reference of somebody that paid for it, or you're clearly trying to drive them into your program. Nothing wrong with that. We've done that before at our company, right? And I think it was just the genuineness of it. Like there's so little of that anymore. I feel like where there's not that marketing undertone or somebody's recording a video for something that's really selfless. So when I look at what you did, that was selfless. And I hope it does
Mhm.
lead to more opportunities where you're able to create more of this type of video just because it is the right way to do it. And, I think it's okay if there's marketing undertones, but really just this one didn't have that feel at all. It just felt like from the heart, you really wanted to do something that you'd be proud of and that the industry would be proud of. And I think you
Mhm.
accomplished that.
Well, listen, that means more than I can convey in words, seriously. And it really was a work of the heart, a work of passion. Or I t- one of my core philosophies in life and the things I've been doing since I've been like living the nomad life is it's amazing to me how oftentimes people are surprised when you show up to help and you don't have any other motivation behind it. And because we're all
Right.
conditioned to so much of our relationships being transactional. And there's a time and place, like you said, for transactional stuff, marketing stuff. I love that stuff. I think it's very interesting, and there's a place for that too. But we're so conditioned to everything being transactional that we sometimes mistakenly believe that everything is. And again, this is my legacy. I think of my father. I want to honor him. I want to honor the people you saw in the video, the guys I worked beside, sweated beside, sometimes cussed and bled beside. Uh, it really was a work of the heart. And to see the industry constantly trashed, even by people who are currently mechanics, they're obviously dissatisfied. And I just want them to know like, you can be seen and heard. You don't have to take this route, and you're not going to accomplish anything by taking this route. Take my word for it. I've tried the negative path myself a few times, and never once did it really accomplish anything good for me. So it was just important to take this route and let people know that there are people out there who really care. And my motivation, I mean, could this lead to other opportunities for me? That would be great. But clearly, I didn't set out that way because no one hired me to do this. I don't know if anybody even wanted me to do this, but I wanted to do it. And once I got to talking to real technicians on the front lines, they were happy to be part of it.
I think so. And I think that opens the door for so many other opportunities for content in our industry. And I think as you look at this, and
Mm.
your video was probably more macro level, looking at it kind of broadly, as far as the career itself. And I'm just curious as to like how many other types of videos do you think you can make about our industry? Because I feel like there's an endless amount of content out there to create if you're able to do it.
Oh, 100%. There's no shortage of ideas at all. Again, in astute eye on your part, you noticed I did take not a full bird's eye view. I got a little bit closer than that, but still kind of a macro view. But there are so many stories that we could go into, and I think need to be gotten into. Everything from the independent pathway shops, and I spent some time in an independent shop too, and it's a different world. Similar, but it's also a different world. I spent time in the dealership. We got the service advisor angle. We got and just thought let's just include the entire fixed ops area. I mean, we can't leave out parts department because without parts, technicians are kind of screwed. So it's a there are just so many stories. There are so many pieces of the industry that we need to drill down in and talk about. We could talk about the technician pipeline, from tech schools to dealership level training programs. Like we mentioned, Bozard's forward down in Florida, who's got
Yep.
their own thing. And from what I understand, most of the people who graduate through a program stay there. And that's in itself is phenomenal. But again, I get all excited talking about this because there's so many stories waiting to be told. If I had unlimited funds and could start tomorrow, I wouldn't live long enough to tell all the stories. So there are lots of stories to tell, from the day to day
You're
technician
absolutely right.
experience. From
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
and
Keith.
I don't want to just create my goal. I apologize. My goal wasn't to create just technician content. I want to facilitate. I want to be a facilitator of conversations because the problems that we talked about that face our industry, the technician shortage, I think there are many different stories being told. You have like leadership and manufacturer level leadership saying this one story. You have your frontline technicians saying their lived experience story. You've got prospective technicians hearing stories or spinning their own story, what to believe about the trade. In my experience, like for example, if you ever work into a business to where you get a lot of he said, she said, you don't know who said what. My way around that was to always get, okay, I'm gonna pull all the managers in the same room and say, okay, what is it that we need to do here? And then stuff actually got done. And what I would like to do is help facilitate those type of conversations, and get everybody in the same room, sometimes literally, sometimes figuratively, and have these conversations because it's not that we're trying to say, oh, you're wrong, they're wrong, he's wrong, she's wrong. It's just that in order to resolve any of these real issues, the much like you said, the shadowing earlier of understanding the different perspectives, manufacturers have some legitimate perspectives, as much as the guy on the front lines may say, kind of grit their teeth at that. And that would have been me at one point. But the frontline tech has some valid viewpoints too. And we need to be having these conversations, solution oriented conversations, not just sessions to scream at each other. And that's the whole point of creating this type of content. And I kind of went off on a tangent there in a way, but
I love it.
the point being, there's no limit to the stories and how deep we can go. You know?
I agree. And the point you made there about having conversations without having to get upset with each other or angry, even with varying viewpoints. I think if you're one of those technicians that's out there, like we talked about before, where you are finding yourself in that rut or in that negative rut, and I think one simple shift you can make in your mindset is to approach this as, am I trying to help solve the problem, the grander problem of the industry, or am I just trying to fight people? Because if I'm just going out to, like, social media is a prime example of that, of people just going back and forth in comment sections and trying to win an argument in a comment section. You're like, okay, you're completely missing the point. Like, why aren't we hearing other people out and then offering suggestions on maybe they are just flat out wrong, but you proving a point to them in a comment section isn't going to do you any good. But if those same two people that are arguing back and forth start to brainstorm about ways to make the industry better, even though they have varying viewpoints on this, you could find yourself in a much better position. Just not even like position, just like mentally in a better position if you reframe your thinking just a little bit.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. This is the basis of human conversation, right? Of actual genuine communication. Because like you said, we're not going to solve anything. And so much of and social media is a good example of this, even though I've been seeing a trend lately, and even on radio stations, I was driving across the country, coming across to make this film. I've been hearing these radio stations having these little segments that was just good news. And I've been seeing more of this trend on social media because so much, I think people are getting burned out with the divisiveness. Everything is divisive. Name the topic. I've seen videos of 11-year-old kid playing drums and someone's dissing the kid in the comments. I mean, it's like people just like, you know what I mean? It's just like, oh, look at that little jerk, man.
How miserable of a person do you have to be to put a 11-year-old down? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. But that same spirit is, like you said, permeates our society in too many ways. And my work in this world, I fully believe, and the automotive trade is one area in which I'm pouring myself into, is to try to bridge these divides, because that is the only way forward. You could macro all the way out for us as human beings and our life on this planet, all the way down to day-to-day life and whatever your chosen profession may be. We have to be able to bridge these divides. We have to be able to disagree and still move forward, because guess what? We can. If you've ever been in a romantic relationship of any kind, married or not, people know that you don't agree on everything, but you can still live life together. Well, this is no different. I mean, you and I, Jay, probably would not agree on everything in life exactly the same. And that would be quite boring if it was that way. But I bet you and I are going to be friends, and I bet we already know we have a lot of common ground, and we know that we can move forward from there with that and make positive changes for everyone, or influence those changes.
That's a great message. Now, I do have one film request from you at some point in your career that I'd love to see, and I'd be curious if you'd be interested in learning what my request is, because I think it would be a cool film.
I'm ready to hear. I'm gonna write it down just to see.
So you talked about your dad's legacy and kind of the legacy that he left behind in a shop. I would love to see more awareness and just kind of highlighting some of the people that came before us, right? Or some of the folks that, that are that alpha mentor in the shop that took a lot of people under their wing over the time that they had in the shop. maybe didn't get the recognition because they largely were in the shop, right? And not up front at a dealership or even at an independent. And I would love to get to the point to where we do highlight some of those people and give them the recognition that I feel they deserve in a lot of ways. And I talk a lot about it, but I've still got one of my mentors' business cards that sits right behind me on
I
the
love it.
podcast. And so I think over the years, I've come across so many technicians that have gone unrecognized for work that wasn't on a car, right? Like where it was somebody that really took people under their wing and
Yes.
really showed them the way, because those are the people we need more of in our industry, are those people that do have that genuine heart, that want to take people under their wing, that want to do things the right way. And unfortunately, a lot of times they're not the ones that get the attention. And so that's my one video idea that I would love to see, is maybe finding that person that has been in the shop for 40 years and has taken a lot of people under their wing. And I almost look at it like, if you watch sports at all, you see some of these coaching trees of a Bill Parcells or a Mike Holmgren or a Bill Walsh, like all these coaches that had all of these proteges underneath them that ended up spreading their wings and flying to different levels. I think we have a lot of that in our own shops, and we don't
Yes.
pay enough attention to those folks.
I told you you were a natural at this. That is a brilliant freaking idea. I get goosebumps, no exaggeration. I'd show you if you could see them. But that could be either a whole deep dive video or even a series of videos of the mentors, because these are the guys who are now, speaking of the shortage, who are aging out, and maybe we could be, some of them may just want to retire and they've earned
Right.
it. But if they don't really weren't interested in retiring, but maybe they've gotten too old, their bodies, kind of like mine, who's like, I really can't do that work anymore. There's still a role for them if they want it. That could be that's a fantastic idea. That's a fantastic idea. And how needed, not only does it honor those people, like you said, who paved the way for people like me, you, and now even the younger people, they probably didn't get the recognition that they deserved, almost guaranteed, from the rest of society. As the technicians. I mean, I became a technician because of someone who was already a technician, and your story is very similar.
Yeah.
And how many people out there are the same way? And I could talk about this the rest of the day. The storyteller in me just got so excited when you were
I
sharing that.
love it.
That's a fantastic idea.
Yeah. And I just look at it as almost giving people credit that they've rightfully earned,
Yeah.
but never received. And, I look back over the course of my career. I was a rep, a factory rep, and there was a dealership that I worked with early on in my career, Lee Case Model. He ended up working directly for me. I went to go work for the dealership, and he was working for me. And it's so funny because he was working for me, yet I was the one learning everything from him. And I would sit down and have so many good conversations with him. A lot of them were technically focused. He was trying to teach me something that I didn't know or didn't have a good understanding of. But he was so patient, and he was so willing to go out of his way to explain something where a lot of people weren't. And
Hmm.
he was just and the guy could care less if he got recognition for it, right? Like he did
Yeah.
not want the recognition. That's the funny part about a lot of these people, and maybe
Hmm.
the difficulty in creating a film around it would be a lot of them don't want the recognition. A lot of them don't want they don't want to be given credit for the stuff that they've done. But I look at
Yeah.
like an example like that where he was hugely impactful on my life, and Lee's since passed away,
Mm,
which is still it's still heartbreaking to me,
sure.
because I had conversations with him about retiring, and he never did actually make it to retirement. And that was
Mm,
like uh, one of those where it to this day still eats at me, because
yeah.
here's this guy that went out of his way to help me and expected nothing in return. So I
Yeah.
just I know there's a lot of Lees out there that we should be
Yes,
sharing the story of, and hopefully we can.
I couldn't agree more. I could name several people myself, just like you, who don't want to be in the spotlight. I think and again, because me having been a technician, I think at least some of them, not all of them, I could probably talk into, look, let me tell you why we need you on camera, man, because I mean, we need this part of the story. You know what I mean? It's
You'd
like,
have to use your storytelling to be able to get them on to tell their
yeah,
story. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
exactly, exactly.
yeah, yeah. And
Mm.
I even look at it. I've had some over the course of my career too that were kind of rough around the edges and
Hmm.
didn't they at first were super cold to me and then over time warmed up and then they
Yep.
became a great mentor to me. And there's just so many different ways you could look at this and go about this, and really just so many good stories to be had. But I think there's a lot of value in being able to tell a lot of those stories.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's what we really need right now. And circling back to what we're just, how we started the conversation. That's why I did this project in the first place, because it's a story that deserves to be told. And there are a lot of people's stories who deserve to be told. And we need more of that messaging. And someone has to take the leap. And maybe there are others doing it I'm not aware of, but I don't know about it yet. So, sometimes people will follow. Maybe there'll be others who do similar things, but it needs to be done. So I'm just going to try to do my part.
You're doing a great job at it. And as we get close to the end of this, we do have some kind of fun questions for you
Okay.
to run through and just learn a little bit more about you. First question is, what was your first car?
My first car that I owned
Eh,
myself.
Yeah, the first car that you like when you got your driver's license and took off. What was your first vehicle?
Well, the first car I drove belonged to my parents, but I kind of took it over with a 1973 Ford Maverick.
All right, all
not the
right,
not the pickup truck kids that you see today. This was a
yeah.
car, and it had a 302 V8. So you can imagine, if you remember the size of those cars, what putting spark plugs in that was like.
That's spoken like a true technician.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that comes to mind. Those spark plugs really suck to do.
Oh yeah. The first car that I paid for after graduating high school, my dad put a $500 down payment, but I took over the payment. I still remember it was $176.50 a month. What do you kill to have a car payment like that now? It was a 1982 Mercury Capri, which is I always tell people is basically a Mustang in disguise.
Yep.
Only had a 200 straight six with a one barrel carburetor.
A one barrel carburetor.
0 to 60 in three
just
minutes.
just choke itself out.
Yeah.
That is great. I had some gems growing up myself, and growing up in a shop, I think the assumption would be that you'd have a nice, reliable vehicle, and that couldn't have been further from the truth from my experience. So
Mhm.
I empathize with some of that. Now, what time do you wake up in the morning? Are you an early riser or late riser? What do you like?
I'm an early riser. It's not uncommon for me to be up at 4 in the morning, but I'm always up before 5 or at 5.
All right, that's something we've learned over the years. I think is a common theme amongst some of the high performers we've had on, and
Mm,
I think it's just a good best practice
yeah.
in general. Even going back to some of the better technicians that I've seen over the years, they were a lot of times the early risers that were in the shop, organized, to the shop a half hour, 15 minutes before the shop actually opened or their
Oh, yeah.
shift started, and we're just prepared and ready to go at start time. Right, it was game time when the clock rolled to 8 o'clock or 7:30 or whatever it was. But I think that's a good thing. um Last question, what's your favorite food?
Oh my gosh, that's really hard to say. If you say drink, I would easily answer coffee. But food,
I'm a
I don't
coffee guy
know.
too.
Yeah, I don't know. I like food, so it's hard to say. I like burgers and pizza like anybody else, but I also like nice soups and blackened salmon. That's probably a
Ooh,
top contender. Blackened salmon. I love blackened salmon.
all right. That's a good one.
Mm.
I'm kind of like you. I'm all over the place. I like all
Hmm.
kinds of food. Probably like food too much in a lot of ways, but But yeah, no, this is, I always love the fun part of the conversation, but for the serious part of the conversation, I genuinely appreciate what you're doing for our industry, and the fact that you had the heart to go create this on your own is really telling. And I think there'll be a lot of people that once they watch this video will be hopeful that you're coming up with some more, because they are really, really good. That video is really, really good. And it just feels like there's so many other stories to tell, and you being able to use not only your industry background, but your
Mhm.
storytelling ability is awesome. And I really look forward to hopefully seeing some more of your videos.
Well, that's definitely my intention. Like I said, I'm funding this all myself, and that's really the only contender. I'll find some way to do it because my heart is sold on this. This needs to be done. If we're going to turn the industry around, we have to be collaborative in our mindset, and this is my way of doing that.
Yeah, I love that. And then lastly, how can somebody get in touch with you?
I'm on social media, obviously, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. It's all Keith E. Smith. E as in Edward. Keith Smith. But you can also email me at the Keith E. Smith at gmail.com. You have to go through great lengths with a name like Smith because all the Gmail accounts were taken. So,
We didn't have
but
that
yeah,
problem
yeah,
with
you can.
Goninen.
Yeah, I envy you a little bit. If you find my video on YouTube, obviously you can leave comments there and say, "Hey, I want to reach out to you. I can't find you." I do have a website. I haven't put some of this automotive content on there yet. It's straightupliving.com. Straightupliving.com. You can go there and click any links also to get more like social media links or email.
We'll make sure to include the links in the show notes as well.
Thank
I
you.
can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this conversation and getting to know you, Keith, and just want you to keep up the great work. You're doing some phenomenal things.
Well, I appreciate it. I consider this the beginning of a good friendship. And so I appreciate you responding to my email and for allowing me to be on your podcast. I really have enjoyed it.
The pleasure was all ours. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.